recording? And it's recording. Welcome everybody to another edition of Take a Virtual Vacation. Tonight we are going to the Flanders area of Belgium. I'll start sharing my screen. There we go. For those of you who have returned to join us, welcome back. Those of you here for the first time, welcome. We hope you enjoy our little tour of Belgium. For those of you new to us, this whole thing started back in the middle of April when everything was pretty intense going on here in the States with the coronavirus, and that's all you would hear about when you turned on the TV. And so this group of 5 travel advisors decided we needed to do something so that we could combat the doom and gloom and give you a little bit of an escape from what was going on TV, as well as from staring at your own 4 walls. I'm Maria Stephanopoulos with Ingenious Travel, and I'm in the Tampa Bay area. We're joined tonight by Candace Stearns with Stay Balanced Travel, who is from the Detroit area. Not with us, unfortunately, tonight are Susan Schaefer from Middle Tennessee near Nashville, Barbara Oliver and Gail Sherman. Susan's company, Ships and Trips Travel, Barbara Oliver with Altogether Now Travel, and Gail Sherman with Wine Lovers Travel. Barbara and Gail are from the Los Angeles area, and unfortunately, as I said, the 3 of them are not able to be here tonight. Where you can find us. You can find our previously recorded virtual vacations in our Facebook group, Take a Virtual Vacation. You can also find them in our YouTube channel. For those of you in the Tampa, Middle Tennessee, or Detroit area, when we're able to really start meeting up again in person, you can find us at our meetup groups with Eat, Drink, Travel, Greater Tampa Bay, Middle Tennessee, or Detroit. Be sure to check those frequently because as things are changing in our local areas, we will start meeting up. So, and I will post this information in the chat as well. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I want to introduce to you tonight Marco Frank from Flanders, Belgium, who is here to take us through what we can expect to see, do, eat, and experience when going to Belgium. For those of you who have questions, please put them in the chat. We'll answer them at the end, and I will also post in the chat the links as to where you can find us. Marco, welcome, and take it away.
All right, thank you very much, Maria. Pleasure to be here. Let me just share my screen. Hopefully everybody can see it.
Yes.
Great, and then let's just put this into presentation mode. And today we will take a virtual journey to Flanders, Belgium. So I'm not sure if anybody of you has been to Flanders, has been to Belgium. You might just ask some questions, or what exactly is Flanders? Why are we talking about one particular region of the country and not about the other one? Everything will become clear throughout the presentation. I'm based in New York City, and as I work for the tourist office for Flanders. To begin with, I just wanted to show you 2 quick introductory videos. There might just be some questions at the end of the videos because it uses some already terminologies that we'll get to know throughout the presentation, so nothing to worry about, but let's just set the stage with those 2 videos. might have guessed it right. That is and was the airport. And I had it at the beginning because typically that's how you get to the destination. You have to fly in, unless of course you're based in Europe, then there's other ways to get to the destination. But if you are from outside of Europe, typically the airport is your first arrival point. So a little bit of an airport experience. Now, once you've arrived and in the country, what is there to see?
This is Flanders, one of Europe's hidden gems. Well, obviously we've hidden it a little too well, because a lot of people can't seem to find it. But don't worry, we're here to help. Flanders is right here, in Belgium, between France and the Netherlands. Flanders is situated in the heart of Europe. Although it can be hard to find on a map, it's incredibly simple to get to. By plane, for example, through our biggest airport, the one in Brussels, called Brussels Airport. As Flanders is part of the Schengen area, you can get there from another European country without border checks. Easy, right? But do you know what's even easier? Staying in Flanders and discovering the region by train, bus, car, bike, horse, Segway? Nah, that just looks silly. This is better. Would you like to know more about Flanders? Great! Go to visitflanders.com.
All right, there we go. Would you like to know more about Flanders? Visit flanders.com, and that concludes the presentation. No, I'm just kidding. I will actually go through a full presentation. Let's just go on. And what we will cover today is basically broken down into three big module segments. First one is very short because we've already seen a little bit about the geography, but I'll just explain it in a little bit more detail. Then we'll talk about our core travel themes. And then we'll go on also talk a little bit about the off the beaten path and more insights and experiences. So let's just move on and talk about the geography. As you've seen from the video, so Flanders is the northern part of Belgium. If you are based in North America or familiar with North American states, that is basically what Flanders is. In the US, they're called states. In Canada, it would be called a province. That's what Flanders is. The whole country is Belgium, and because it's so tiny, there's basically only two states. So it's us, Flanders, and then the other guys. And the two states have two separate tourist offices. That's why we're only talking about the Flemish part, and the other guys have their own separate tourist office. But nothing to worry about that I only talk about the northern part, because if you look at the visitor statistics, the arrival numbers, 95% of all North Americans actually go to the Flemish part. And the language spoken in the north, the Flemish part, is basically Dutch. It's basically just the Dutch dialect, sometimes also referred to as Flemish. There are 6 major cities in the destination. The capital of Europe, the capital of Belgium, the capital of Flanders, which is Brussels, right here in the middle. Symbolized here by this little structure that is the atomium. You might have heard of that. It was built for 1958 World Exhibition. To the north, we got the seaport city of Antwerp, second largest seaport in Europe. Then over to the coast, we got Bruges. In between Bruges and Brussels, we have the city of Ghent. And then nestled around Brussels are the two small cities of Mechelen and Leuven. All of Flanders is very small. It's roughly about the size of the US state of Connecticut. If you happen to dial in from Canada, in Canadian comparison, it would compare to 2 times the greater Toronto area. Population in Flanders is about 7.8 million people. All of Belgium has close to around 11 million people. So we are very close and in the heart of Europe, close to London, close to Amsterdam, close to Cologne, close to Paris. All the cities that you see here on the map are less than 2 hours away by train. So it makes it very, very easy to come to the heart of Europe, come to us and add those other cities on. Paris by train is 1 hour, 22 minutes away. London is 1 hour and 48. Amsterdam is 1 hour 50. and Cologne is an hour and 40. So very easy to make a pan-European vacation trip and then see multiple countries all in one trip because everything is really so close together. So let's move on to our core travel themes, the 5 core travel themes that we have. Sometimes casually, I refer to them as our usual suspects. So you might have heard or come across some of those suspects before. Suspect number 1 is our art and heritage. The old architecture, the old heritage is really omnipresent in Flanders all over the place. And that's typically what people want to see when they come to the destination. They want to see the plazas, squares, castles, cathedrals, cobblestones, so everything still well preserved. What you see here in the heart of Brussels is the Grand Place with Brussels City Hall to the left and the Brussels flower carpet. The square is UNESCO World Heritage. And just talking about the flower carpet that you see here, that happens every 2 years in August. Unfortunately, the one that was supposed to happen last month because of Corona did not materialize. So we have to wait another 2 years for that event to reoccur. People might also want to go to like Bruges to experience a UNESCO World Heritage City Center because the city center of Bruges is UNESCO World Heritage. You know, think about taking canal boat rides, going to museums, admiring the city, looking at the artwork. Still, a lot of the old art is still very much present in the destination. So if you're an art lover, that is the place for you to go, to the museums, the churches. What you see here as an example is the Ghent altarpiece that was created by Jan van Eyck and his brother. And it's considered the first Northern Renaissance painting. It went through a very long restoration process. It's about 60% completed. And it was supposed to be 2020, a big commemorative Jan van Eyck year in Ghent. Unfortunately, most of that commemorative year did not materialize because of Corona, but some elements of that program have been extended, and hopefully visitors will be able to experience that in 2021. If you're asking, wait a minute, this painting looks a little bit familiar. I think I've come across this before. I'm sure you have, especially if you're a movie buff, if you're really into movies, because it was in the 2014 Hollywood movie, The Monuments Man. If you've seen the movie, it's a true story. It really happened. At the end of World War II, the Nazis take all the art. They want to destroy it, burn it, blow it up. And the American GIs find out about that. So George Clooney and company have to move in and rescue the artwork and then bring it back to Belgium. So it really happened, except in reality, it was not George Clooney, of course. It's just an actor that portrayed the real people that did that famous job and brought the paintings back. Or people might also want to experience the art gallery and Atelier Peter Paul Rubens in Antwerp. So as I said, the old art and architecture is still very much present in today's destination. And if you think, well, people in Belgium obviously only have old stuff, isn't there anything new? Then of course I have to say, no. There's also modern art, modern architecture. And it makes a really eclectic mix of the old and the new. And what you see here is the Port Authority in the port of Antwerp. And if you're familiar with the architect, it was actually created by Zaha Hadid. It was actually, fortunately, one of her last project, and she passed away about 2 months before it was fully completed. The next usual suspect is, of course, our whole gastronomy. And the gastronomy, I'm really like all inclusive. I'm really talking about, you know, Belgian beers. I'm talking about the great other aspects of our gastronomy culture, but let's just stick with beer. Why is beer such a big thing in Belgium? Number one, because it comes in a lot of different varieties and flavors. It's based on various different fermentation processes that create all those different flavors. Interestingly, every beer has its own glass. So if you have one particular beer, you have to use one particular glass for that beer. If you drink another beer, you have to use another glass for that. And Belgians take the beer very, very seriously, almost as serious as the French take the wines. There's a lot of food and beer pairings going on. It's really something that's hot. You really want to, find a perfect combination. There is a lot of traditional breweries that have been around for several decades or centuries. Beer museums, beer experiences, a lot of beer cafes, beer pubs. Some of them have 300, 400, 900 different beers available. You almost get a phone book of beers, and then you just flip through and trying to find the right beer. And there's a lot of beer festivals and beer tours available. So it's a very dominant beer culture in the destination. Just a couple of facts. There's about 160 breweries in Belgium. I mean, the number keeps growing every year. About 16 to 700 different beers with different flavors and aroma. Over 20 million hectoliters of beers are produced every year in Belgium. The world's largest beer brewing company is located in Flanders. The technical legal term is called Anheuser-Busch InBev. So originally it started out as the company that everybody knows as Stella Artois. And then later on, a couple of years ago, they also, expanded and bought other breweries, including Anheuser-Busch. And I have to say it, fortunately or unfortunately, Bud Light now technically is a Belgian-owned beer. I'm not sure if it's a positive or negative. I'll just leave it up in the air. Some of the best beer cafes are in the destination. There's a lot of also international awards that we have won for beer and other gastronomic experiences. And then last but not least, what I also wanted to point out, that the Belgian beer culture is a UNESCO World Heritage. So any beer connoisseur will feel right at home in the destination. Here, just another couple of inspirational images. And if you look at the picture in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see like the beer glasses are not super big. Sometimes I get the question, what's the difference between German beer culture, because Germans drink a lot of beer, and the Belgian ones. If you imagine like Oompa music and the big steins and Oktoberfest, so that's the German one. It's all about drinking lots of beers and lots of quantities. In Belgium, it's all about savoring the beer, taking your time, discovering all the different flavors, and not about the quantity of beer that you consume. It's all about the quality and taking it slow, taking your time, and really enjoying the different tastes. Let's move on to chocolates. Also very big in the destination. There's a lot of chocolatiers in the destination. Belgium is really known, starting with a big international chocolate factories like a Godiva, down to real like the custom handmade chocolates in the village, the chocolatiers. A lot of different chocolate experiences. We produce over 660,000 tons of chocolates every year. There's a lot of innovative chocolate products out there, shocking combinations of the finest quality. And what I mean by shocking combination, I know several chocolatiers that combine, for example, wasabi and chocolate. And they all picked this up by living in Asia, bringing back those ingredients and experimenting. And initially you think, my God, this does not go together. How can you actually make chocolates with wasabi? But actually does go together, and you have really this explosion of flavors. As I said, there's a lot of bespoke chocolatiers out there, over 320 of those. And that's really where the fun begins, because of course you can go to your local supermarket at home and buy chocolate, but that's not the real thing. You have to come to Belgium for the chocolate museums, sign up for a workshop, learn about the chocolates, the history, make your own chocolates, create your own chocolates, do some of the chocolate tours. And we really eat and cook with it. And there's a lot of health and wellness benefits associated with chocolate, in particularly dark chocolate. There's a lot of medical studies that really talk about the benefits of eating dark chocolate. And of course, the chocolatiers and the confectioners are also mentioned in guides and restaurants guides. So that is really an outstanding accomplishment. Of course, another suspect, the Belgian waffles, just another comfort food, the Belgian fries with mayonnaise, and mussels in Brussels. Of course, mussels are also available in other cities, but a lot of good food. You don't need to bring your own food. We feed you well, and the food is really like affordable. It does not cost a lot of money. Talk about food not costing a lot of money. Let's talk about high-end and fine dining. What is the ultimate fine dining guidebook resource in the world? You guessed it right, it's the Michelin Restaurant Guide. And as you can see, there's a separate edition for Belgium and Luxembourg. And of course, now the question is, well, how many restaurants are there in this guide? Because often, you know, I do get the question, there is Michelin star dining in Flanders. People don't think that we have any Michelin star rated restaurants. They have no idea. They just don't know about it. And they want to know really, you know, how many Michelin star rated restaurants there are. And maybe there's 3 or 4. And these are more or less actual quotes I'm getting, and I'm still getting them. But the real answer is that, yes, why don't you tell me? Okay, I will tell you. And there's 128 Michelin star rated restaurants. And then they asked me, you're kidding, right? No, I'm not kidding. This is impressive, and people are surprised. And if you take it on a per capita basis, given the small population in the country, it's really like a huge number. Let me just lead you on a little excursion about the Michelin star dining guide, because I think it's actually a very interesting little story. So typically when we talk about a Michelin guide, it's technically the Michelin red guides. As you could see from the other image and this image right here, you know, the guides are red. And they've been published annually since 1900. And they were first published in France by the Michelin Tire Company to boost tire sales. And the Belgian restaurants have been included since 1904. The inspectors that rate those restaurants are fully autonomous, fully independent. Even within the company, there's a lot of firewalls set up, so they can really write an unbiased review. And the star rating that we know today, 1, 2, and 3 stars, was developed between 1926 and 1936. And it's actually tied again to boosting tire sales, because how do you boost tire sales? Well, basically you tell a French where to eat, then they will drive more. And then when they drive more, they will wear the tires, and then you can sell more tires. So 1-star restaurant is defined as a very good restaurant in its category. What it basically meant originally, when it was related to cars and driving, it's a restaurant that was worth a stop on the tour that you are already on. 2 stars is excellent cooking, worth a detour. So that explanation already tells you it's worth a detour. So you're on a route, but the restaurant is just a couple miles or kilometers off your route, and then it's just worth a detour to go to that. And 3 stars is exceptional cuisine, worth a special journey, meaning that restaurant was worth just a trip by its own. Just go in your car, drive there, and eat there. So that's, you know, I thought a little bit of an interesting background story, how a tire company came about writing or creating a restaurant guide. Just a couple of additional facts. So if you combine the 128 restaurants, that actually makes for 152 Michelin stars. 75% of those Michelin star rated restaurants are actually in our region of Belgium. There's a 3-star restaurant, 22 2-stars, and 105 1-star rated restaurants. And if I tell you that there are some Michelin star chefs that purposely close their restaurant and trying to return stars, you might think that's not true. That is actually true. A lot of chefs actually do not want the Michelin star. So technically, I think we could even have more, but the chefs just don't want more. there's various reasons for that. I think we can go into that during another presentation. Just a couple of other facts that really outlines why gastronomy is such an important industry sector and why it's such a great destination for you to come and visit, because we have over 17,000 restaurants, over 10,000 pubs, 22 hotel management schools, over 2,000 chocolate shops. Just alone in Bruges, for example, there's over 50 chocolate shops. And apart from having the world's largest beer brewing company, we also have the world's largest chocolate producer in our destination. So again, non-stop food, we feed you well, we take care of you, you don't need to starve. It is really like a great, great culinary experience at all levels, from basic comfort food, from your fries and waffle, all the way to the fine dining. And by fine dining, you know, when you look at this plate here, you might think, oh my God, this costs an arm and a leg, because I know how expensive food in the US is when I go to a Michelin star rated restaurant. And I would agree that it is expensive in the US. My last Michelin star dinner, together with a friend, I was out in California in Sonoma County, and for 2 dinners, we paid over $800. So, you know, it is what it is. It's just expensive. But if you think that it's the same price or cost in Belgium, it's not. My last Michelin star dinner was in Bruges. It was just 2 months earlier. And that was 59 euro. So again, 59 euro for 6-course Michelin star dinner in Bruges. Again, very affordable. It does not break the bank. And again, it's something that you will find when you go to a destination. It is really like a value destination. You get a lot of value for your dollars or whatever currency you have, or euros. It doesn't matter. I mean, there's so many currencies out there. It is a true value destination. And the food is really like world class, because, you know, dining is almost a national pastime. People take their time. And then sometimes as a tourist, you really need to tell the waiter that you only have a limited time to eat at the restaurant. Because if you don't tell a waiter, they assume you just have as much time as a local, and you can spend maybe 2 hours for lunch and 4 hours for dinner or so. Like, might not have the time available. You might want to move at a slightly faster pace, but if you tell them up front, no problem at all whatsoever. You also find a lot of unique local products. You know, we talked about Michelin stars. So there's a lot of young and very talented chefs, the Flemish Kitchen Rebels, which we really promote and invest and make sure that the talent is retained and they have all the resources to succeed in that industry, because it can be very stressful. The Flemish frites, or Belgian fries, is actually also now government's list of an intangible cultural heritage. There's also a lot of unique locations where you can dine, you know, in castles, monasteries, next to the canal and the brewery. A lot of food events, the beerstronomy, what I said, you know, also cooking with beer, pairing the foods with the beer, and also cooking classes by Michelin star chefs, so you can maybe pick up a couple of tricks of the trade. Then just a couple of more images that show you a couple of inspirational ideas. Let's move on and talk about the active wellness. How can we afford to eat so much food and still remain thin? Well, cycling is the answer. Cycling is the national pastime in Flanders. People cycle, and again, cycling for all skill and interest levels. From leisurely cycling, just pick up a bicycle in the city, just cycle around town, or maybe to the outskirts, just an hour, 2 hours, whatever time you have. Or then all the way to the enthusiastic level where you take it more seriously, you dress up in your jerseys, your cleats, and then last but not least, also on a professional level. So cycling really like for all skill and interest levels. If you are a cycling aficionado, really come and bring your bike, knock yourself out, cycle around for 4, 5, 6 days. The landscape is primarily flat, but of course there's also a couple of smaller hills, and you can really have the time of your life, and then at the end of the day, sit down and have an amazing dinner. And it's like, you know, if you want to do more the easy leisurely along the canals, it's flat. Anybody and everybody can do that. So you might think Belgium is actually crazy and cycling fanatic, and yes, we are. But what is actually very interesting, I just looked at the numbers the other day, just looking at bicycle sales. There are actually more bicycles sold in the United States on a per capita basis than in Belgium. It's almost unbelievable because, you know, I think in the US, we don't cycle that much because we just live in cities. We need to drive somewhere. There's not a lot of space just to cycle. But if you look at the sales numbers for bicycles, adjusted for population, more bikes get sold in the US than in Belgium. Pack up the kids and the family. And as I said, you're on a dedicated cycling road network, and the whole cycling road network is about 7,500 miles, about 12,000 kilometers long. So you're on a dedicated road just for the cyclists. There's also a cycling network that is all signposted. So the whole network is signposted with numbers, so it's easy to navigate. You can put your preferred routes together by, you know, looking at maps, looking at apps. There's thematic loops. So if you wanted to combine a gastronomy cycling tour, an art tour, a nature tour, you can do that. Different themes available, artists like Rubens. And it's really something for everyone, for beginners, for families, and the advanced cyclists. And if you want to do something a little bit more crazy long distance cycling, there's also long distance routes available where you can really knock yourself out and have a great time. And of course, there's also cycling friendly hotels, bike friendly hotels. They're defined by basically being very close to an official cycling route, just 3 miles or 5 kilometers away. They offer special service to cyclists, secure bicycle shed, storage, repair kits, maps, cycles for hire, and of course, also a comfortable bed to rest your legs and your head after a long day of cycling. Let's just look at a quick video that is geared a little bit more towards the passionate cycling enthusiast.
We are in Flanders at the moment, in Belgium. We're riding some amazing roads, both on tarmac, on gravel, and some cobbles as well.
I think the hardest part about riding in Flanders are all the steep hills and the cobbles. We're not really used to cobbles, but after this weekend, I think...
Small country lanes, tight turns, that we're not used to maybe.
Twisting, turning, going up and down all the time. You don't know what to expect around the next corner.
Come here in the spring for the spring classics. Find a good spot on a steep hill and watch the pros, and then go ride yourself.
When we came back from riding, we went straight to a pub where we had some really nice local beers.
Flanders is definitely an excellent destination for cycling, with the history, all the racing, and yeah, it's just seeped in.
You can see it everywhere. Everybody knows everything about cycling and people cheer you on.
All right, moving on, and let's quickly talk about fashion and design. There's sort of like a long history of cloth trading and cloth making. Also think of Belgian tapestry, lace making, that all really started back in the Middle Ages. What stands out nowadays is actually the Fashion Academy in Antwerp, which by now is rated #3 in the world. So the third best fashion academy in the world is in Antwerp. Lots of opportunities for fashion shopping. All the big international brands are there, but of course also all the local designers, local fashion gurus and experts. So make sure you bring a good credit card and then you go shopping, buy everything that you love. Also, good thing is if you are a non-EU resident, you will actually get the Belgian sales tax back. You can claim it back when you leave the country. You go shopping for gloves, shoes, hats, dresses, anything your heart desires, even tailor-made, custom-made clothing, and of course also for diamonds, Antwerp diamonds. Antwerp is still the diamond capital of the world, depending on what type of diamonds you're talking about. Up to 80% of the world's diamonds are still traded and cut in the city of Antwerp. Last but not least of our usual suspects, I quickly wanted to also mention some historic World War I sites. World War I, of course, took place a little bit more than 100 years ago, between 1914 and 1918, but the western part of Flanders, West Flanders, or Flanders Fields, witnessed and saw a lot of the battles in that time period. We did have a big commemorative campaign for that between 2014 and 2018. But if you wanted to still see some of the trenches, the museums, retrace American history in World War I, Canadian involvement, the British Commonwealth, if that is of interest to you, by all means, go there and experience it. And of course, the destination is also relatively close to other important battle sites of World War II. Normandy in France is just 4 hours away. If you know the Battle of the Bulge, which happened winter 44, 45, is in the southern part of Belgium. Or if you've seen or learned about Operation Market Garden, the bridges of Arnhem and Nijmegen, which are just across the border in Holland. Again, everything is right in the center of Europe that you can really easily explore. Now, let's move on to part 3 and slowly trying to wrap things up and go a little bit off the beaten path, away from our usual suspects. Because Flanders really offers many of the beaten path experiences. And I wanted to particularly highlight 2, the coast and Ardennes and also some other parts of the country. And they're remote, they are not very frequented, often visited by people, because traditionally it's primarily like the cities that people gravitate to. It's like the Brussels, the Bruges, the Antwerp. But again, the rural parts are really great for maybe a new normal vacation. The coast is really easy to reach. It's like all of Flanders is the size of Connecticut, so you're never really that far away from the coast. The infrastructure is great, the road system is great, the trains are great. It can be very relaxing if you're more in the secluded part of the beach. It's also very friendly for families, a lot of activities for kids. You can walk around the beaches, go hiking, just enjoy the breathe, the fresh air, go cycling, or get your summer tan. You might think this is maybe like a beach in Florida, very sunny, but no, this is actually a Belgium, a Flemish beach. There's also a lot of UNESCO World Heritage and culture that you can experience. What you can actually see here is actually 3 shrimp fishers that are fishing shrimp on horseback, and that is also an intangible UNESCO World Heritage. You can also find a lot of art installation. You find art galleries, open air art. Of course, you find also your pub there, great restaurants, also Michelin star rated restaurants at the coast. Moving on to the Ardennes, that is the southern part of Flanders. It's a little bit more hilly, forests, it's more tranquil. There's a lot of cycling going on, a lot of hiking. You got some nice picturesque villages there. Another part of Belgium that I wanted to highlight is Limburg, which is the northeastern part. It's also like tranquil, there's a lot of forest there, a lot of nature, also perfect for cycling and hiking. What you can see here is actually a bike trail in the trees. It's called cycling in the trees. Or you can cycle through a lake. Again, a lot of nature out there. You can also do hot air balloon rides, a lot of nature activities, which may be surprising given, again, the fact how quote unquote populated the destination, how small it is, and everybody just thinks of the big cities. But no, there is also a lot of nature out there. There's a national forest, national park just south of Brussels called Hellebos. And you can see, you can take some nice leisurely hikes there, enjoy the nature, breathe in the fresh air. Another off the beaten path experience I definitely want to highlight are the number of castles and the castles in Belgium. It's on a per square mile basis or square kilometer, doesn't really matter how you measure. One of the highest or the highest numbers of castles in Europe. There's over 3,000 of those. 400 of those are accessible to the public, which ergo also means 2,600 are just personal private castles and not accessible to the public. Unfortunately, I do not own one of those 2,600 castles. I guess that's why I'm working for Visit Flanders and trying to promote the destination. You can find all types of different castles, small castles, large castles. You can find them out in the countryside. You can find them in the cities. Like here, this is actually a castle in the city of Antwerp. And you can actually also find hotels in castles. So you can just book a hotel stay in a castle. Right here is one example in the eastern part of Flanders. Comics is another very interesting, unusual, off the beaten path experience. And comics are actually a very big part of everyday life in Belgium. Interestingly, actually printed comic magazine circulation is increasing. You think, oh, print is dead, print is out, nobody's reading print anymore. Not really. It's a big, big part of everyday life, and they are printing more comic magazines now than what they used to do. And it's like Belgium is really famous for comics. There are comic strip museums dedicated to those cartoon characters, a lot of events around comics. You can do a comic mural walk in Brussels. Several house facades have been painted with comics. Some of the more famous ones, for example, are the Smurfs, the little blue guys, Tintin, and also Lucky Luke. If you're European, you might know Lucky Luke. If you're from North America, it didn't really make it over here, but Lucky Luke is that cowboy that you see back here on the wall, and with the Dalton brothers that are robbing the banks and so. So I grew up with all those characters. A lot of fun, also for the kids to experience those characters. Belgium is really very rich in museums. As I said, there's a comic strip museum. In Brussels alone, for example, there's over 80 museums. So if you wanted to learn something, go to the museums, find out more. And I would say they're all at the right size. By right size, I mean they're not like a Smithsonian where you can easily spend 3 days and you just get kind of like sucked into that big, big museum and you want to learn everything. Belgian museums are smaller. They're just the perfect for half a day, even just an hour, 2 hours. And it's not overwhelming, but you can still learn a tremendous amount. Auto World and Train World. Auto World is in this exhibition hall that you can see in the background here. A very nice museum, just 2 or 3 hours in there, more than enough. Learn about different cars, car manufacturers. They also got rotating exhibitions, depending on whatever the theme is. Could be Italian sports cars, could be VW or whatever. Train World is also a very interesting train museum. Also an interesting side note that Belgium was the first country in continental Europe that had a steam rail line. Of course, Britain was first, but Britain is not part of continental Europe, as we know. But on the continent, Belgium was the first country to have the train. There's a diamond museum, particularly in Antwerp, the Royal Institute of Natural Science. There's a little picture down there, which is, so to speak, our smaller edition of the Smithsonian. In the world, in Natural Science Museum, again, it's ranked number 3. If you want to learn about Fry Museum, Chocolate Museum, Beer Museum, Fashion Museums, Art Museums, I could go on and on. So hopefully you get the drift. There is probably like a museum for everyone. And then let's just come back maybe full circle. We started with beer, or beer was relatively at the beginning of the presentation. But Belgium is more than just beer. Belgium also has now excellent wines. Their wine regions are very, very small, not big. And the production is also very small scale. They don't really export any of the white wines. That's primarily what they're making, white wines. So you really have to come to the destination and experience it. Belgian whiskey, a lot of breweries are getting into whiskey distilling now. Here's an example of whiskey made by a brewery called Het Anker. And of course, Belgian gin and Geneva. So again, a great variety of different beverage choices out there for you to experience in a destination. A couple of practical tips before we really wrap it up. The official language is Dutch. Of course, English is widely spoken. Everybody speaks English. And then the only city where French is more important than the Dutch is Brussels. Brussels is officially bilingual, so French and Dutch. But I said, like, everybody speaks English. The current electrical current is 230 volt. So if you do come from the US, you need an adapter to plug in there. The currency is, of course, you're on the euro. Credit cards are widely accepted, so no worries that you might have some issues not being able to pay. A lot of the cities out there, be it Brussels, Ghent, Antwerp, they do offer city cards. So what that is basically just buy, let's say, an Antwerp city card for 2 days, 3 days, how many days whatever you need. And that it includes a lot of the entrances to museums. It might even include public transport. It might include a free bicycle ride. So they basically combine a lot of the experiences in those particular cities and offer great savings. Stores are typically open between 10 in the morning and 6 in the evening. The time zone is the Central European time, which from the East Coast is Eastern Standard Time plus 6 hours. And also a very interesting tip that I can give you is that tips in Belgium are typically included, meaning like you do not tip. So if your restaurant bill is $23.50, you pay $23.50, you don't give a tip. If your taxi ride is $15.60, you pay $15.60. Of course, if there is some extraordinary circumstances that the waiter goes way above and beyond, of course, they happily would accept a tip. But that is just a tip. The tips are typically included. So let's just wrap it up with one final video that talks about our Flemish masters. And by now you should have learned everything that we do is a lot of handcrafted. There's a lot of mastery behind everything, be it the beer, be it the fashion, be it the art. The original artists, the Rubens, Jan van Eyck, that created all those great paintings, the Flemish masters, the original masters, and of course now also the modern masters of beer brewing and cooking and so on. So let's just look at our Flemish masters to wrap things up.
For ages, Flanders has been home to the old masters. Still today, Flanders is the place where new ideas are born against a historical backdrop. Are you ready to explore? Nibble on the chocolate beard of Rubens' self-portrait. Experience the winter in Flanders like white powder on your waffles, or pedal your way through Bruegelian landscapes. Adore the mystic lamb in the Ghent altarpiece, showing the holy traditions. When Icarus falls, Antwerp's fashion catches. Observe Van Eyck, the first master of oil painting. As a true Margaretha Van Eyck, eat Belgian fries with pride and enjoy the craftsmanship of one of Belgium's foamiest beers. Where Rubens' cross descents move on the lines of his art. Taste the history of Flanders' culinary treasures. Be a Bruegel rebel angel and party in the land of tomorrow. Come to the heart of Europe to wear, taste, hear, smell, show and honor our Flemish masters. Together, they make Flanders state of the art. Are you ready to stir your senses?
So with that, we've come to the end of my presentation. I've taken up a lot of your time, but I hope I was able to provide some useful insights, some inspiration, some food for thought, maybe another destination that quite wasn't on a radar screen initially, but as we've learned, can easily be added on from the other European usual suspects like the Paris, the Londons, the Amsterdam. We are so close. Come to Flanders and check it out for yourself because seeing is believing.
Well, thank you, Marco. That was definitely insightful. And as I've been saying, as we've had all these other virtual vacations, I'm just adding more and more to my list. I've been to Brussels. It's been a while, more than need to go back at this point. But you know, I mean, just it's fun. It's fun. We have a couple questions in the chat. If you do have a question, please feel free to enter it in. I'm going to start asking them now. One question that came up was, what would you suggest the amount of time, what's the best amount of time to spend in Flanders?
That is always a tricky question. As much time as possible. Of course, you got to be realistic. Are you going there for the first time? Are you going back for a second time? Ideally, I would say 3-4 days minimum. If you can afford to spend more time there, by all means, do it. You will not have any repetitive experiences. I do take in my professional life also a lot of like travel trade professionals over to the destination, and I typically take them for 1 week, and they all tell me after the week that this is not enough. They have to see still more. There's more they want to see. So, but on the other hand, I also know from quote unquote like a psychological question is if you come from a long distance, you know, you fly for 10 hours and you're basically told, well, for your 1 week vacation, all you're going to see is Belgium or is Flanders. It's a little bit of a hard psychological hurdle to come over because you think like, oh my God, I came all this way to Europe and I'm just going to be in this tiny place and not going to see anything else. So yes, you can fill an 8-day itinerary without any problems whatsoever. If you have 3-4 days, I'll take that. And even if you have just 1 or 2 days, by all means, go there. Do not even think about it. It's not worth it. Spend whatever time you can. And
is there a better time of year to come?
Every time is a good time. Of course, there is, in terms of tourist arrivals in any type of regular year, of course, we're not regular nowadays. The typical, you know, normal distribution in the sense, you know, got the shoulder seasons in spring and fall. In the summer, there's the typical, you know, big, and winter is slower. But it's like there is not a bad time to come. It really depends what you're looking for. If you want to experience a little bit more off season in the winter, there's some great Christmas markets that I haven't even touched upon Because I mean, I could go on for another 2 hours, tell you about new things that I've not yet covered with you. So it's really up to you. There is no like a bad time that says like, oh my God, this is a bad time, I should not go. I mean, the climate is, so to speak, like a moderate coastal climate. In the winter, the temperatures typically stay above freezing. So if it snows, it's just like a little maybe coating, if at all. The summers are not super hot, although with global climate change, they're getting a little bit warmer, but we're talking about something in maybe in the low 80s if it's really hot. I said there is not a bad time to go. There's all times are good times.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the Christmas markets, because I was going to ask you about that and whether or not there were any there.
Yes, if I may ask, the interesting thing about Christmas markets, so if you think, Christmas markets originated in Germany. And the German Christmas markets are quote unquote very religious in the sense that they shut down before Christmas. Like come the 24th, that's kind of like the last day, and then Christmas Day, there are no more Christmas markets. In Germany, you're done with them. They fold up their little booth and then put everything away for another year. In Belgium, they go on until the beginning of January.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Good.
So you can still enjoy like a nice gingerbread or waffles or some local artwork, craftsmanship, still, between Christmas and New Year, or even after the New Year.
So,
Yeah, and
so speaking of original stuff, I just had a quick question. I know French fries are not French. So do the Belgians claim the French fry?
Yes. So the word French fries comes from American GIs. World War One, that were eating Belgian fries, but they were stationed in the French-speaking part of the country.
Right. Yeah.
Hence, they called it French fries, referring to the language,
right,
and not the country.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to get political here, but you might remember after 9/11, when there was a little bit dubious whether or not France was part of the Allied coalition against in the Iraqi war, and the French were a little bit hesitant. And then Congress said, we're going to punish the French so they will remember for centuries, and rename the French fries in a canteen and call them freedom fries. Because the French are so hesitant in our coalition against Hussein and the war and so on. The French said like, so what? We don't care. They're not ours. Rename them whatever you want.
Right. It's always stuck here in the U.S., right? The French fry.
Yes, so it comes from the language, and in the southern part of Belgium, they speak French. American GIs stationed there in World War One, and just named them French fries.
I'm glad you set us all straight.
You're welcome. And then if you're in Belgium, of course, don't order French fries, just order frites.
Right.
And then don't order Belgian beer, just order beer.
I'm going to hit all the Michelin star restaurants.
It will be an endeavor and will take you some time.
Good.
Well, speaking of restaurants, do you have any favorites you'd like to tell us about?
I mean, there is not really like a bad restaurant. I mean, in terms of food, you can just have a lot of like quote unquote comfort food, and just go to like a fry booth and then buy a bag of fries or a jar of fries, and then put your favorite sauce on it. My favorite sauce is actually curry, and call it a lunch. That is perfectly acceptable. Nothing wrong with that. Or you can go to a real like nice 3 Michelin star rated restaurant. That 3 Michelin star rated restaurant that we have is Hof van Cleve, which is an country estate, an old farmhouse, which is very nice. That must have been, I think, one of my longest dinners I've had in my life. The dinner took well over 6 hours.
Wow.
It was 8 appetizers, 4 main courses, and 2 desserts. So again, you can have from, hey, I'm just gonna pick up a bag of fries and for €1 or €2, and just have a perfectly acceptable, takeout lunch, to really an exorbitant sit down feast for several hours that really fills you up. and anything in between.
Great. Wonderful.
Any other questions from the group? No, looks like we answered them. So, Marco, thank you very much for joining us tonight. This was quite insightful, and you really did take us all over Flanders, which was fantastic. For those of you that are still here with us, be sure to tune in next week for our virtual vacation to Japan. Again, you can find the information for that in our Take a Virtual Vacation group on Facebook. The information's in the chat. If you are interested in saving that, if you look at the chat in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see 3 dots in a box. Click on that, and then you can save the chat, and it'll create a Zoom folder on your computer. Otherwise, be sure to look for our invite, either on Eventbrite or in the Take a Virtual Vacation group. Again, thank you, Marco. Candace, thanks again for being here.
Thank
and
you,
for the rest
everybody.
of you, we'll see you next week.
Thanks,
Good night.
everyone.
Good night.
Bye. Good night.
Holly, I'm seeing yours now. I'll get back to you on the favorite and unique hotel stays. Thanks a lot, everybody.